Hello everyone, and welcome to the campaign for an English Parliament. Democracy in Europe is on the verge of being taken over by hardline authoritarianism. Some people would argue, in fact, that it already has been. Oh no, not the far right, I hear you exclaim. No, actually, but by the liberal elites. The very people who claim the far right are the danger to democracy. In December last year, Romania had its election cancelled because the first round of voting went against the establishment elites, as the winner was a nationalist. The establishment, in the guise of the Supreme Court, then had the result of the election annulled, presumably to protect the people from their choice. Russian collusion was also cited as a reason for the overturning of a democratic election, as well as interference from some internet influencers. Of course, it's not the first time that Russia and the internet have been cited as causes for concern in the fight to protect democracy. And I'm not saying that Russia wouldn't interfere if it could, but is it really possible that a large number of Romanian voters voted the way they did because of Russian influence on the net? Or is it more believable that the election was overturned because the elite just didn't like the outcome? With the rise of populism and nationalism right across Europe, the elites are starting to get panicky and are getting rather inventive about ways to circumvent the democratic process if it proves necessary or is just convenient. Of course, it's not just Romania that elections are getting cancelled. We were to have local authority elections in England this year. However, the two main centre-left parties, the Labour Party and the Conservatives, couldn't seem to trust the voters to vote the right way because of the rise of the Reform Party, the UK's new populist party. The government, along with many local authorities, decided to cancel the local elections until an unspecified date in the future, so that they could bring in what is supposed to be a much better system of local government in a year or two's time, when the opinion polls might coincidentally, and not by any subliminal messaging, be better disposed towards the elites and not reform. So no democracy for you lot, until we can trust you to vote the way we want. Of course, there are other equally heavy-handed methods authoritarian governments employ, such as curbing free speech on the excuse that free speech leads to hate speech. And then again, some undemocratic methods are more subtle, such as giving power to an ever-increasing number of quangos to run government business, reducing our elected representatives' input and parliamentary oversight. In Germany, the AfD party is under surveillance by the security services, and it is being suggested that the party be banned completely from standing in elections in February to protect democracy. Of course, many commentators have pointed out the obvious flaw in this argument, that subverting the democratic process whilst claiming to defend it is the highest form of hypocrisy. Also, many in Germany are not as gullible as the elites perceive them to be, especially as they can see with their own eyes that the main right-wing parties in Germany, Italy, the Netherlands and Sweden, for instance, are all working within the democratic system. Certainly some individual members of these parties have said some pretty nasty things at times. But is that a good enough reason for banning an entire political party, even if that party's manifesto includes policies that we as individuals might find questionable? Surely, if the people don't want what the right-wing parties are peddling, the voters won't vote for them. But of course the voters right across Europe are beginning to vote for the right, because they have stopped believing in the promises of mainstream liberal left politicians. This is what terrifies the liberal left. But instead of compromising and ditching some of their more radical policies, which they know the people don't want, they resort to what is becoming known as lawfare. Democrats in the USA tried to use the law to ban Donald Trump. And how did that work out? All they did was make Trump look like the victim. Imagine that, making Donald Trump look like the oppressed one. Trump laughed all the way to the White House. All the Democrats had to do was tone down their more radical policies to align them with the wishes of the American people. But no, so ideologically driven were they that was not an option for them. So they tried to get Trump banned from standing in the election and paved the way for the biggest political comeback in US history. And now the German liberal left parties are toying with the same idea. What was it Sun Tzu said? When making martyrs of your enemies, first dig your own grave. Well, it might not have been Sun Tzu, but you get the point. But surely, I hear you mutter into your cup of tea, even if the AfD were to win in February, they would probably be kept out of government by the other parties refusing to work with them, as we've seen in Thuringia, preferring to form coalitions of the defeated to keep them out. So no need to ban them, right? Indeed, you might very well think so. But sadly, ideology raises its ugly head and spits in the soup once more. You see, even though it's virtually impossible for the AfD to win the election in February, and even if by some miracle it managed to come first, it could be frozen out of power, as we have already seen. However, that's still not good enough for the liberal left apparently. They do not want to see any far right-wing parties in Parliament on principle. The principle being that Parliament, and therefore democracy, is only for the liberal left and its subordinate offshoots, like the Conservatives. Hang on a minute, I hear you think. Surely the CDU-CSU union are Conservatives. Well, that's debatable. Like the Conservative Party in the UK, they are probably Conservative in name only, regarded by many these days as an offshoot of liberalism. No Conservative would screw up the national flag and throw it away, as Angela Merkel did, or open the borders to all comers. And although Friedrich Merz, their new candidate, did introduce a motion in Parliament recently to curb immigration and tighten the borders, this is seen more of a way of taking votes from the AfD than the CDU becoming more right-wing. This motion just scraped through on the first vote, with the support of the AfD, for which Merz has been soundly criticised, but was defeated and thrown out in the second round of voting, in which many of his own union MPs voted against it. Would it not be more sensible to accept the fact that some of their fellow Germans want a more nationally centred politics, and make some compromises for the greater good of the country? After all, if the opinion polls are to be believed, the AfD represent 1 in 5 of German people, hardly an insignificant number. Surely it will be better to win them over with moderate policies rather than arrogantly displaying your contempt for them by trying to ban their prospective choice. Surely no democratic system would wish to ignore such a large proportion of the people as 1 in 5. Oh, hang on, I forgot for the moment I'm living in England, a country where up to 2/3 of the electorate regularly have their democratic wishes ignored because of the first past the post electoral system, a totally undemocratic system that disproportionately favours the 2 main parties to the detriment of all others. Silly me. Still, thinking about it, is any country where one party can obtain 33% of the popular vote, that's 20% of the eligible vote, and still win a landslide victory, is that really a democracy? To be honest, that's the kind of democracy that Stalin would have approved of. What was it Churchill said? Democracy is the least worst form of government. Well, our present crop of politicians are certainly stretching that observation to its limits. And of course it's not just national political parties that indulge in this undemocratic behaviour. The European Union has been bending democracy to its will for years. How many countries have had their currency leaned on to force them to conform, or had sanctions imposed upon them when they didn't do as they was told? How many referendums have been rerun till they get the result they want? How many technocrats have been appointed to run governments that no one voted for? The excuse that this form of undemocratic behaviour is being imposed upon us for our own good is not believed by anyone but the most gullible. In consequence, imposing authoritarianism to defeat right-wing populists is having the exactly opposite effect, right across the UK and Europe. The question is nationalism rising right across the West no matter what the liberal elites try to do to stop it? Or because of what liberal elites are trying to do to stop it? This is the campaign for an English Parliament. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe, and press the notification icon so you are informed of future videos as they become available. And we also ask you to be a hero. Come and join the campaign for an English Parliament and help us call for a referendum on England's future, and be a rebel with your vote. England is worth it. Thank you.